There is a moment that arrives quietly, usually somewhere in your 40s. You look in the mirror under a certain light, or you see a photograph of yourself from 10 years ago, and you notice that your teeth are not the color they used to be. Not stained, exactly. Not dirty, just darker, warmer, more yellow. And your first thought is coffee. So you cut back, you switch to a whitening toothpaste. Maybe you buy the strips, the ones that promise a shade change in 14 days. And something strange happens. Either nothing changes at all, or your teeth get sensitive and the color creeps back within a few months. What almost nobody explains is that the yellowing you are seeing after 40 is usually not a stain at all. It is not sitting on the surface of your teeth, it is coming from underneath them. And once you understand that, every product on the whitening shelf starts to make a different kind of sense. Your tooth is not one material. It is two layered. The outer layer is enamel. It is the hardest substance the human body produces, harder than bone, and it is almost entirely mineral. What most people do not realize about enamel is that it is not white. It is translucent, slightly bluish, slightly glassy, like frosted glass held up to a window. Underneath that translucent shell is dentin. Dentin is softer. It is living tissue connected to the nerve, and dentin is yellow. Naturally, permanently, structurally yellow. It always has been. It was yellow when you were 20, and it is yellow now. The color you see when you look at your teeth is not the color of enamel. It is the color of dentin, seen through enamel. So the question stops being, why are my teeth turning yellow, and becomes something much more precise. Why am I seeing more of the dentin than I used to? There are two answers, and both of them are about time. The first is that enamel gets thinner. Enamel has no living cells. It cannot repair itself the way skin or bone does. Every acidic drink, every abrasive brushing stroke, every night of grinding removes a little, and none of it grows back. Over 4 or 5 decades of use, the layer thins. And as the translucent shell gets thinner, the yellow underneath shows through more clearly. It is the same reason a single coat of white paint over a dark wall looks different from 3 coats. The second answer is that dentin gets thicker and darker. Your tooth is not passive. Throughout your life, the cells inside the pulp lay down new dentin from the inside out, a process called secondary dentin formation. This is a protective response, a way of putting more distance between the outside world and the nerve. But that newer dentin is denser and darker than the original. So while the enamel is thinning above, the dentin is deepening below. The two changes move toward each other. This is why the yellowing after 40 behaves so differently from a coffee stain. A coffee stain is extrinsic. It sits on the outside in the microscopic pores of the enamel surface, and it comes off with a professional cleaning or with mild polishing. What you are describing, the color that does not come off, that returns after whitening, that seems to have arrived gradually rather than suddenly, is intrinsic. It is the structure of the tooth itself becoming visible. Now, this is where the conversation usually stops in a dentist's office. Enamel thins with age, nothing to be done, here are the whitening options. But there is a layer underneath that explanation that matters enormously for women in their 40s and 50s, and it almost never gets mentioned. Enamel is not entirely one way. It cannot regrow, but it can remineralize. The surface of your enamel is in constant exchange with the fluid around it, losing minerals when the environment is acidic and gaining them back when it is not. Calcium and phosphate move in and out of the enamel surface every single day of your life. The vehicle for that exchange is saliva. Saliva is not water. It is a mineral solution. It carries calcium and phosphate. It carries bicarbonate that buffers acid and brings the mouth back to neutral. And it carries proteins that form a protective film over the enamel. When saliva is flowing well, the daily cycle of demineralization and remineralization stays roughly in balance, and enamel loss is slow. When saliva drops, that balance tips, and the loss accelerates. Here is the part that connects to everything else happening in your body right now. Salivary glands have estrogen receptors. As estrogen declines through perimenopause and into menopause, salivary flow tends to decrease, and the composition of the saliva itself changes. This is why dry mouth is such a common complaint in this stage of life, and why so many women notice it first at night, when flow naturally drops to its lowest point anyway. So a woman at 52 may be losing enamel measurably faster than she was at 32, not because she is doing anything differently, but because the repair system running quietly in the background has slowed down. Less buffering after every acidic meal, less mineral available for the nightly rebuild, 8 hours of sleep with almost no saliva at all. The enamel thins faster, the yellow shows through sooner, and it looks like it happened suddenly, when in fact it was accumulating across years. Which brings us to why the whitening aisle so often disappoints and occasionally makes things worse. Peroxide whitening works by oxidizing pigment molecules. It is genuinely effective on extrinsic staining, on the coffee and the wine and the tea sitting in the enamel surface. What it cannot do is change the color of dentin that you are seeing through a thinning window. You can bleach the window. The wall behind it stays the same color. And abrasive whitening toothpastes work by a different mechanism entirely. They polish. They physically remove the outermost surface, along with whatever is stained on it. Used occasionally, that is fine. Used twice a day for years, on enamel that is already thinning and no longer being fully remineralized overnight, you are removing the very thing that was hiding the yellow in the first place. The short-term result is brighter. The long-term direction is the opposite. None of this means the situation is hopeless. It means the target is different from what you thought. If the yellowing is coming from enamel loss, then the goal is not to bleach harder. It is to slow the loss and support what remineralization capacity you still have. That changes the priorities completely. It means paying attention to acid exposure, because acid is the single largest driver of enamel loss, and it is everywhere. Citrus, sparkling water, wine, vinegar dressings, and for many women, reflux that they may not even be aware of. It means not brushing immediately after anything acidic, because enamel is temporarily softened for a period afterward, and brushing into that softened surface removes more than it protects. Waiting is not a small detail. It is one of the highest impact changes available. It means treating dry mouth as a dental issue and not just a comfort issue, because saliva is the repair mechanism, and a mouth that stays dry through the night is a mouth that does not rebuild. And it means choosing products by what they do rather than what they promise. Fluoride at low concentration supports remineralization directly. Xylitol supports salivary flow without feeding the bacteria that produce acid. A low abrasivity toothpaste protects the surface you are trying to keep. The color of your teeth after 40 is telling you something real about the structure underneath. It is worth listening to, because the thinning that shows up as yellowing is the same thinning that shows up later as sensitivity, as cracking, as fracture. The color is simply the earliest visible sign, and the earliest sign is the most useful one you will get. The information presented in this video is intended for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical or dental advice. Always consult your dentist or healthcare provider before making changes to your oral care routine or any aspect of your health.